Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So on May 21st, 2018, a 19-year-old woman named Cedella Roman decided she wanted to go for a run. And that wasn't unusual for Cedella because she was a runner and she, ran almost every day. But on this particular day, she was going to go for a run that she would probably remember for the rest of her life. Because on May 21st, 2018, Cedella, who was a French citizen visiting her mother, who lives in White Rock, British Columbia, that Cedella decided she was going to go for a run on the beach. And so she starts out from the beach near her mom's house, heads south, and she's just running along, enjoying the beautiful scenery at the beach. And after about 30 minutes, she sees two men walking towards her, and they motion for her to stop. And these two men were U.S. Border and Customs agents because she had jogged over the border from British Columbia to the state of Washington. And she hadn't realized it. She had no ID on her. She didn't have her passport. And so there was a hassle. She was detained, and until all of the paperwork was squared away, and her mother, who came to the location where her daughter was really upset. And her biggest complaint was, well, there were no signs on the beach. How was my daughter supposed to know that she was going from Canada into the U.S. if there are no signs that she's crossing this boundary? If there had been a sign, she probably would have just turned around and ran back home. And her mom had a pretty good point, but I think that sometimes the same thing happens to us as private school leaders when it comes to our boundaries between school and home. Our boundaries are not clearly marked, and so we just go right past them. We just blow through all these stop signs because the stop signs aren't there. And what this leads to is checking emails in bed and at the dinner table and at the red light, and staying at school way later than you planned, and weeknights and weekends when you're constantly on your laptop and on your phone. And we have good intentions about our boundaries, but they're not clear. And just like Cedella running on the beach, she crossed a boundary that she would have, if it had been clear, she wouldn't have crossed it. And so how do we make our good intentions about our boundaries between school and home into reality? Well, in today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, I want to ask you the following question. Are your boundaries written in pencil or Sharpie? And before we jump into today's topic, I have another question for you. Are any of these statements true about you? I'm going to ask you, I'm going to make a few statements here, and then you just nod along or say yes or no. Are any of these statements true about you? Number one, the tyranny of the urgent controls my day, and I start working on my important tasks when the school gets quiet. Number two, I feel discouraged, lonely, exhausted, and stressed out, and I'm not sure that my job as a private school leader is sustainable. Number three, my school invades every part of my professional and personal life. Number four, I want to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And then number five, I feel called to do this work, but I am not sure how long I can keep doing it if nothing changes. So if even one of those statements were true about you, I just want to let you know that I felt that way, all 5 of those things, I've felt that way many times during my career, and that's why I created the PSL Pro membership. PSL Pro is a membership community that helps private school leaders go from feeling stressed out, discouraged, and lonely to feeling energized, fulfilled, and supported. And you have access to a thriving community of school leaders who actually get it and they get you, and we go live once a week, whether it's for a masterclass or group coaching or what we call the We Get It Roundtable or live Q&A, going live with other leaders from around the United States once a week. But also the PSL Pro Success Path is a step-by-step plan to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And it uses Thrive Academy as the content, and then the Success Path has 5 different levels to it, and you just figure out what level you're on, and then not only with the content, but also with the community, we help support you to grow as a leader. And so I want to just put all of that in front of you. And if any of those statements were true about you, I want you to think about this. Is having a supportive community of other private school leaders who meet up once a week and who have this built-in content to help you grow and to help you be less of those things that were in those statements, is all of that worth $1 a day? Because that's what it costs for PSL Pro. So if that's something that sounds intriguing to you, go to theprivateschoolleader.com/membership to learn more about the PSL Pro membership community. That's theprivateschoolleader.com/membership. And then just quickly, I want to give you a free gift. This is called The Top 6 Ways to Protect Your School from a Lawsuit. And this is a 10-page PDF that will help you keep your staff and students stay safe and also keep you and your school out of court. Litigation is expensive, time-consuming, and super stressful, and this common sense guide will help you be more intentional and proactive when it comes to protecting your school. So if you go to theprivateschoolleader.com/lawsuit, you can grab your free guide, The Top 6 Ways to Protect Your School from a Lawsuit, and that's over at theprivateschoolleader.com/lawsuit for free, just to say thanks for listening to the podcast. So I've said before on a previous episode, or maybe more than one, that I really believe that our schools are like water. And water goes where it wants to go. It will go into every nook and cranny. If you get some water in your basement, it will go everywhere. It fills in all the cracks. Water goes where it wants to. And unfortunately, as we come up on the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, I'm thinking about the levees that broke. I'm thinking about a river bank or a concrete wall of a dam and how those are things, they're quote-unquote boundaries that hold back the water. And I want you to think about your backyard for a moment. If I suddenly introduce 25,000 gallons of water into your backyard, it's going to be a really big mess. It's going to be mud. It's probably going to be water in your basement. It's going to be a mess. But if you had 4 concrete walls, if you had a hole in your backyard, a hole that was dug out, and there were 4 concrete walls and a concrete floor inside that hole, now if I introduce 25,000 gallons of water into your backyard, you're going to be the most popular neighbor in your neighborhood because you're going to have a beautiful in-ground pool. And so what's the difference between a disaster and a party? It's those boundaries, those 4 concrete walls that's holding the water where it should be. And I think sometimes our boundaries are written in pencil and not in Sharpie. And so that's the point of today's podcast episode, is how can we get clear on these boundaries and how can we go from writing them in pencil and start writing them in Sharpie. And I'll get to that in a moment to illuminate that point for you a little bit more. But let's start off by talking about, why do boundaries matter? Boundaries aren't barriers. They're guidelines or guardrails for sustainability. So I want you to hear that again. Sometimes we think about boundaries as things that keep us out of a place, like a fence or a wall, keep us out of somewhere that we want to be. But a boundary isn't a barrier. It's like a guardrail for sustainability for your life, for your job. And I worry that too many of us don't have these guardrails. We don't have these boundaries. And there's so much pressure for you as a leader to be accessible and to be visible and to be accommodating and to be all in and to be reachable at any time of the day or night. And we mix that up with that being the definition of being a good leader. And what that leads to is burnout and discouragement. There's a lot of pressure to be that way. You wear 1,000 hats. You do so many different things. Your job is so complex as you're constantly searching for elegant solutions to these very, very complex problems. But here's the thing. If you don't define your boundaries, someone else will. If you don't define your boundaries, someone else will. And when our boundaries between work and school are weak, when they're written lightly in pencil, then we're risking burnout. We're compromising our decision making because we're going to be so tired. In the long run, we're actually going to have a decrease in respect from staff and parents. And it's going to, most importantly, put strain on you and strain on your relationships with your loved ones. And then I think eventually it leads to questioning yourself as to, do I really want to keep doing this? Thinking about quitting, thinking about getting out of private school leadership altogether. And so we want to take a look at this idea of your boundaries in pencil versus your boundaries in Sharpie. And then I'll give you a few strategies that you can apply to go from having your boundaries written in pencil to have them written in Sharpie. And so what it looks like if your boundaries are written in pencil, and I want you to listen and think about if this is describing you. If our boundaries are written in pencil, they're flexible, they're erasable, they're often defined by other people's expectations, they're often unclear, they're not clear to other people. So if our boundaries are written in pencil, we haven't communicated them to our teachers or to our parents. And so that's why they're emailing us and texting us and calling us at all hours of the day and night, because we haven't made them clear to other people. And it's not just that they're hard to see for us because they're written in lightly in pencil. They're hard to see for others as well. And then what we do is we just negotiate with ourselves. And so if you don't have a time in mind when you're going to leave every day, then you're going to leave way later than you want to leave. And if we don't have a boundary as far as when we're going to stop looking at emails, then we're going to dip in and out of our emails on our smartphone all evening long and throughout the weekend. And this leads to checking, having our boundaries written in pencil leads to checking emails in bed. It led to me checking emails in the morning, lying in bed next to my wife before I even said good morning to the person that I shared a bed with. It leads to checking emails in the pew at church on Sunday morning. Guilty. I've been there. I've done it. Checking emails at a stoplight or at the dinner table. And hearing from my daughter's, Dad, when do we get to see you instead of the back of your laptop? And then the guilt that goes with that as a dad and the guilt as a husband, because my wife said probably once or twice in the times when things weren't going great, she said to me, sometimes I feel like you're married to the school instead of me. And I wonder if your significant other has said that to you. She said, sometimes I feel like you're married to the school instead of me. And it crushed me. But did it change my boundaries? No. And so having your boundaries written in pencil leads to you replying to emails from staff and parents at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m., Sunday morning. And it leads to us saying yes to every invitation or request for outside of school stuff because we don't want to disappoint anyone. It leads to parents bypassing the proper channels, and then they're texting your personal phone number about an issue, or they're emailing you without going through the teacher. It leads to canceling dinner with the family because you have to accommodate a board member's phone call again. It's one thing if it's an outlier, but if it's happening all the time, then it's a boundaries issue. And the last thing I'll add about boundaries written in pencil is that what about vacation? When we go on vacation, are we actually on vacation, or do we have 1 foot on the school property and 1 foot on vacation with our family? So what does it look like when we have our boundaries in Sharpie? Well, let's talk about that, because Sharpie, as you know, is permanent marker. And so these boundaries are more clearly seen. They're permanent. They're respected. And not only are they easy for you to see so that you don't do the thing, they're also easier for others to see. Just compare something lightly written in pencil versus something that's a line that's drawn with Sharpie. And I find that it's harder to negotiate with myself to kind of not follow that boundary for myself when it's written in Sharpie. And so let me talk about that for a moment. If my boundaries are written in pencil and they're unclear and they're difficult to see for me and difficult to see for others, it is so easy for me to negotiate with myself and just be like, well, I just need to stay a little later, or I just need to catch up on emails, and I'll catch up on emails and try to stay engaged with the family at the same time, and so on and so forth. There's no clear demarcation between school and home. It's like water. It's everywhere. But it's harder to negotiate with yourself and just step over those boundaries when they're really, really clear. And so what are some examples of what that actually looks like? So I'll give you a few examples and then we'll get into the strategies. And so some would be setting office hours for emails and actually honoring them. And I'll talk about schedule send and how, you can navigate this whole idea of emails in the evening and the way that your school communicates in one of the strategies. I'll come back to that in a moment. It looks like, having your boundaries written in Sharpie, it looks like politely and firmly redirecting parents who text you or email you that they need to talk to the teacher first, or they need to talk to the athletic director about the playing time that their son didn't receive at the soccer game. When you have your boundaries written in Sharpie, you can protect your family time and your personal time without guilt, because that's something that goes with it sometimes when we're trying to make our boundaries more clear, is that we feel guilty. Somehow we're a bad leader if we have these boundaries. And it looks like taking real vacations that I call unplugged vacations. We put a super clear away message in email and on our phone. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And we delegate while we're away, and then we trust the people that we've delegated to, and we're not constantly checking in on vacation. And I just want to pause here and acknowledge that I know that some people are listening to this and they're like, Mark, you don't get it. You don't understand. You're not at my school. I'm a one-person show. My board is relentless. The parents are relentless. My teachers are relentless. And I feel like I'm public property all day and all night. Okay. Number one, I want to let you know that I see you because I've been you and I've been there. And it feels awful. Okay. But the other thing that I want to say is if you just described yourself that way, I'm really worried about you, because you're not going to be doing this for very long before the body pulls the emergency brake. And so we need to put some boundaries in, or we are careening towards burnout and discontent and discouragement and mental health issues and physical issues and resentment and bitterness and loss of identity. Our identity becomes the school, and you might already be there. Well, it's not too late to start moving this in the right direction. Some other examples of having our boundaries written in Sharpie instead of in pencil is we're not going to answer every single call and solve every problem and attend every single event, and then we're going to stop apologizing when we don't. And I get it. We need to attend most of the events, but depending on the size of your school, I have some coaching clients that, there are so many things going on after school every day with sports and with rehearsals for the spring musical and student council, and this group is decorating for this, and then there's all these events, and it isn't possible to go to everything. And if you go to some things, like the soccer game, let's say, you don't have to be there for the whole game. And so I'm just trying to change your paradigm a little bit about boundaries. The other examples of writing your boundaries in Sharpie instead of in pencil are to train the community, the school community, teachers, parents, to value professionalism over the idea of accessibility, nonstop accessibility. So again, professionals in, let's take a quick sidebar. If you were in the professional services industry, the equivalent of you being a head of school, you're going to be a CPA or an attorney or a dentist or a therapist or a financial advisor. You're going to be a mid-level executive in a corporation. All those people, all those jobs exist in your town or in your city. What is the expectation of access from their clients or patients for all of those people that I named? What is their expectation of access after 5 or 6 p.m.? It's probably 0, right? But then here we are as private school leaders, and we might as well be outside on the busiest corner in your city or town, just open all the time, open 24/7. And we need to change that paradigm. And then, leaders who have their boundaries written in Sharpie and not in pencil, they can still be highly effective because you're protecting your energy, and it's not cold and unkind to have boundaries. It's actually wise to have boundaries. All right, so hopefully I've convinced you the need to go from, we want to trade in that pencil and pick up the Sharpie. And so I'm going to give you 7 strategies that you can implement to move the needle on this issue, to make your boundaries more clear. And I know that 7 is a lot, and hopefully you're multitasking while you're listening to this. I'm actually going to go through them pretty quickly, but I'll take good care of you in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 149, and you can go back and look at these if you can't remember them. So number 1 is define when you're available and then communicate it clearly. Define when you're available and then communicate it clearly. So what are your work communication windows? What are your work hours? Every business has work hours, and I get it. You're like, well, my work hours are from the time I get up till the time I go to bed. But it could be that it's from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay? I'm not saying that it's reasonable for you to say, 9 to 5 or something like that. Okay, I get it. But also it could be from the time you arrive at school until like 5 or 6 p.m. I think that's super reasonable, Monday to Friday. Emails answered 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. or 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. And then once you have it, once you've decided on that, we're going to communicate it clearly. We're going to put it in our signature in emails. We're going to put it in your welcome letter for back to school. We're going to put it on your voicemail. We're going to put it in the back to school PD information. Or if you've already had your back to school PD, we're going to communicate to the teachers that this is not only what they can expect from you, but this is what you expect from them, because you're modeling this for them. And you know that your teachers who are responding to emails at all hours of the day and night, these parents are emailing them at 8 p.m. and your teachers are responding to it. First of all, they're feeding the beast. And second of all, they're going to burn out and you're going to lose that teacher. We want to hang on to our teachers. And so there need to be more clear boundaries, especially with this email that is the bane of our existence. So define when you're available and then communicate it clearly. Number 2, turn off notifications after school hours. Now, you've heard me say before that I think one of the most important things for you to do is to turn off your email notifications, period, to have those turned off all the time. But I know that some of you, the way you communicate at school is through Slack or through WhatsApp, different school portals that might be your school education. It's like a branch from your school management software. But if that's the case, and it's not just turning off your email notification, then we need to turn off those notifications when the workday ends. And you're like, well, my workday never ends. Okay, I get it, but that's what I did for years, and I ended up in the hospital. That's what my clients did for years, and almost all of them have had some instance where the body pulled the emergency brake, or they wanted to quit, or both. And I'm trying to keep you on this side of burning out, on this side of your body pulling the emergency brake. You can't just keep running it back year after year and expect a different result. You don't need to be on call 24/7 to be an excellent leader. The last time I checked, you're not an emergency room doctor and you don't get paid like one. And here's the thing with checking email in the evening. If someone really needs you, let's say the board president or the facilities person or whatever, and it's about something big that happened, God forbid, there was a car accident and one of the students was injured, or the roof is leaking and there's water running down the hallway. We need to work it out with people who would be reaching us with that information, that they are going to call you or text you. And we have this mindset that I need to keep checking email because there might be something there. There might be someone who needs me. There might be a problem and I want to know what's going on. I don't want that waiting for me in the morning. I'm going to continue to try to get you to have a certain time when you cut off looking at email, and that the way that people get in touch with you, if there's something that's important and urgent after a certain time, is that they call or text, and then that will help keep you out of your email inbox. Okay, strategy number 3 is that you're going to model boundaries for your staff and parents. So don't email your teachers at 9 p.m. unless it's a true emergency. If you don't want them doing emails in the evening, then don't communicate with them after a certain time. Don't respond to parent emails at night unless it's a true emergency. You're feeding the beast. And this is where schedule send becomes your best friend. That if you decide, maybe you have little kids, and then they finally go to bed and you've got 30 minutes where you're going to just check email and you're going to respond to some emails. Okay. Well, don't send them at that time. Put schedule send for 7 a.m. and then you're not feeding the beast. Because if you're responding to emails at 8 or 9 p.m., to teachers and to parents, you're sending the message that I'm going to continue to respond to emails at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. Don't feed the beast. Model it for your teachers and your parents. And then strategy number 4 is to practice saying no without guilt. I read this quote when I was preparing for this episode, and it said, "No is a complete sentence." No is a complete sentence. Sometimes we say no, and then we immediately feel like we have to give this over-explaining, over-apologizing manifesto or, monologue about why we said no. No is a complete sentence. If that feels too sharp for you, you could say something like, well, I'm currently slammed, or I'm currently at capacity. send me an email and I'd be happy to take a look at this in a couple weeks. Maybe we could revisit this at next month's meeting, something like that, where you're clearly kicking the can down the road, but you're probably not going to just be like, no, okay, we're not going to do that. But I'm just trying to get you to recognize that you don't have to say yes to everything. And I think that's a problem that most of us have. I certainly had it. You could also say, well, that time won't work for me, but I'd be glad to connect with you during blank hours, between 7:30 and 5 or whatever the case might be. Is it going to feel awkward and weird at first? Yes. Will it be less awkward and less weird the more you say it? Yes. Will it be worth it when you can kind of redefine what those boundaries are for responding? Absolutely. So we're going to try practice saying no without guilt. Number 5, our fifth strategy, use an out-of-office policy and then actually follow it. Use an out-of-office policy and then actually follow it. You're going on vacation, then have your out-of-office email responder tell people exactly when you'll respond. I'll be back on such and such, and I'll respond to your email. If you need someone in the meantime, please contact so-and-so. The more clear that you make your away responder, if you're even just taking one day off, especially when you're taking a vacation, the less likely you feel the need to be in and out of your email inbox. And then I encourage you strongly that when you are on vacation or when you're away, especially when you're away with your family or your partner or your spouse, we tend to be like, well, I'm just going to check and see how things are going. And then we're dipping in and out of that. Here's the thing. Maybe if you're an early riser, most private school leaders are, and I know that when I'm on vacation, I'm usually the first one up. If things are going crazy at school and you want to spend 15 to 30 minutes alone, out on the porch or the deck, wherever you're on vacation, okay. I still discourage that strongly, but I also recognize that we can't go from having all of our boundaries in pencil to having all of them in Sharpie overnight. And so, again, the way respond, the auto out of office reply, and then we're actually going to stick to it. And then 2 more. Number 6 strategy, build a leadership team that will share the load. You can't do everything. Empower your others. Delegate, not just delegate tasks, but when you're away, and to start doing this when you're on campus, is to delegate decision-making authority. Okay? One of the reasons that I coach a couple of clients who say that they need to start delegating decision-making authority because everybody has to check in with them about everything. And if you can delegate some of that authority, you're giving them the responsibility of the task. The next step after that is to give them some decision-making authority and then have their back. And if they made a bad decision, then that's a conversation. But we're going to build a leadership team that can help share the load. And then finally, I think that with strategy number 7, I think this one is really important, is just establish some no-fly zones for you outside of school. So your bed, your dinner table, church, the couch, I don't think that's asking a whole lot. I think should be no-brainers. I've done every single one of those. So establishing some no-fly zones where we're going to almost draw, Sharpie around the bed or around the dinner table or around the pew that you're sitting in at church, or when you're at the at a restaurant, for example, and you're going to draw that around the table at the restaurant, or maybe on the couch. I think the couch is, and our cell phone in our hand, that electronic leash, that's where those boundaries are really put to the test. And then establish a designated work area. I've found that when you have to get up and move and go to a spot and work for a specific amount of time on school, then you're not dipping in and out of schoolwork all evening long. So what are our big takeaways? Again, we want to switch our pencil these just hard to see, lightly written, hard for you to see, hard for others to see boundaries that seem always negotiable. We want to trade those in for Sharpie, more bold, more clear for you to see and for others to see. And so what are we going to do as far as strategies? Number one, define when you are available and then communicate it clearly. Strategy number two is turn off notifications after school hours. Number three is model this for your staff and for your parents. Number four, practice saying no without guilt. Number five, use an out-of-office policy or responder and then actually follow that and do it. Number six, build a leadership team that will share the load. And number seven, establish some no-fly zones for school work outside of school. And your call to action for today's episode is to pick the area that you think needs the most work and just implement that strategy. And so just as a way to wrap it up, just a quick reminder about joining the PSL Pro community. Just $1 a day. You can check that out at theprivateschoolleader.com/membership. And then another reminder about that free gift for you, the top 6 ways to protect your school from a lawsuit. You can get that for free at theprivateschoolleader.com/lawsuit. And then if I could ask for a favor, if you would just share the link to the podcast with another leader at your school or a rising leader at your school. Let's get the word out so that other people can benefit from this content. And I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I just want to say I appreciate you and all of your hard work that you're doing at your school. Thank you so much for taking some of your precious time to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.